Please subscribe and ask your friends too. And if you can, PayPal so we can stay on the air. Well, I want to deal with the question of prices and taxes. Jay Goldberg, appropriately, with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. He knows about all these things. He joins me. I want to put the question to you. So many people are in tough economic times. You were in the Maritimes this summer. One day, prices went up 14% on fuel. Most people say that this is doing nothing to fight climate change. Squat. So why is the government continuing to jack up prices and make it hard for people to get to work and to afford food?
Well, that's exactly right. The government is convinced that somehow paying more taxes is going to make the environment better off.
But well, it's not as though they're spending on anything like for more fire engines or for flood control. They're just taking the money in. So is the theory that if you pay more, you're going to use less?
Well, that might be the government's theory, but here's the reality. If you're not living in downtown Toronto, where Chrystia Freeland lives, you can't necessarily take the subway to work or bike to work. You got to drive your kids to school, you got to drive to work, you have to drive to the grocery store. No matter what the Trudeau government does in increasing the carbon tax, folks will still have to get from point A to point B. You also have to heat your home. And so this is a lot of people, particularly in Atlantic Canada, are now reacting to the massive increase in home heating costs that Canadians are facing and that we're going to face this winter because of the carbon tax. It is jacking up incredibly the cost of heating your home. And again, that's not a question of voluntary. That's not a habit that somehow you can break or it's a bad thing. This is a necessity. And by jacking up the prices of food and heating and driving to where you need to go, that is making Canadians less well off.
Trudeau has been there for 8 years. He's been saying this for 8 years and raising the taxes. Why has there not been more written about and more in the press about the fact that this is doing nothing for climate change? And secondly, it's doing you can't, as you just point out, you have to use a certain amount of fuel to get to work and to heat your home. And you aren't going to reduce that. So the whole premise is baloney.
The whole premise is baloney. And look
why have we lived with it for 8 years?
Look at British Columbia. The carbon tax came in 2008. Emissions in BC have steadily gone up since then, except for a brief period during COVID. Emissions in BC have gone up higher than emissions in Atlantic Canada. Atlantic Canada, particularly Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, they're leading the country in reducing emissions. Nova Scotia had the lowest carbon tax in Canada until July, when the federal government imposed the federal backstop because they didn't want Nova Scotians to have more affordable lives.
Absolutely, totally bizarre. Bring on the election. Jay Goldberg, thank you very much. 3 minutes. Liberties and freedom of speech are under attack in Canada like never before. So let's keep this discussion on the air. PayPal, write a check, and please include your address so I can write a thank you letter to you. And ask your friends, please subscribe. It's important to keep this on the air. And thank you.